There's a moment almost every person over 40 has experienced. Sitting in a quiet room late at night when the house is still. You realize the version others see, responsible, reliable, keeping it all together. That version is not the real one. The real you is there, wondering where years went and why something important still feels missing. If that moment sounds familiar, don't turn this off. This might be the most honest conversation you've had in a long time. Stay with me because this is going somewhere most people are not willing to go. Before we move forward, if this channel made you think differently, take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. The Silent Strategist is for those done with surface-level advice, wanting to understand life's deeper currents. Subscribe, and you will not miss a single one of these conversations. Now, back to that quiet room. Here's something almost nobody tells you, understood deeply by history's most powerful thinkers. Being alone, silence making you uncomfortable, feelings you push down, that's not a sign something is wrong. It's a sign you've been running from your own mind. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people spend their entire lives sprinting away from their own thoughts. They fill the silence with noise, solitude with others' problems, empty hours with distractions and busyness. This feels productive but leads nowhere. Not laziness or stupidity, but because stillness asks hard questions. Most haven't been taught how to answer them. But you are here. That already says something about you. Let us start with what nobody wants to admit. The emotional life most people are living is not their actual life. It is a reaction. Think about your last week. How many decisions came from a clear, centered place inside you, and how many came from fear? Anxiety of what others might think? Guilt of not measuring up? From desperation for approval from people you don't even fully respect? Most people realize a terrifyingly large percentage of choices were made by unexamined emotions. That's where power leaks out of a life. Not in big, dramatic moments, but daily surrenders to unquestioned feelings. Now, here's where things get interesting. A tradition of thought through honest philosophers and strategists takes a position most modern self-help books are too afraid to teach. Your emotions are not your friends. They are ancient signals designed for a world that no longer exists, wired when the biggest threat was a predator, when anger needed to be explosive to save your life, fear paralyzing to stop a fatal mistake. Need for tribal approval was the difference between survival and being cast out to die. That wiring did its job for tens of thousands of years, but the wiring didn't update. Hardware is the same, software is the same. Now that ancient survival system is firing in contexts it was never designed for. Alarm meant to save you from a lion is now going off when your boss sends a cold email. Shame response designed to keep you from tribal rejection is crushing you when starting something new. Fear of standing out, being too visible, taking a risk, that's not wisdom. It's an outdated program. Running in a modern world, costing you years of your life. The question is not whether you feel these things. Of course you feel them. You are human. The question is whether you are letting them drive. Let me give you an image that might stay with you. Picture a pilot in the middle of a serious storm. Not little turbulence, a real storm, rattling everything, instruments haywire, alarms screaming. Every instinct telling the pilot to panic. An untrained pilot grabs controls, reacts to every alarm. Pulls up when alarm says pull up, banks left when alarm says bank left. Completely reactive in grip of noise. That's almost always how crashes happen. Not from the storm itself, but from the reaction to the storm. The trained pilot does something almost inhuman. He slows down, he breathes. He ignores screaming alarms. Focuses on one thing, actual instruments telling him where the horizon is. Trusts data over noise. He flies through the storm not because he feels nothing, but because he learned not to let feelings drive the plane. You are the pilot. Your emotions, loud and urgent, are often the alarms going haywire. Your mind, when trained and disciplined, when you put space between what you feel and do, that is the instrument that actually knows where the horizon is. This is the core shift separating people who feel stuck from those who move forward. Not talent, luck, or circumstance. The ability to observe your emotional state without being consumed. To feel the fear and ask calmly, what is this fear actually telling me? Is this a real threat or just noise? To feel the anger and instead of venting or suppressing it, follow it back to its root. What am I actually afraid of here? What does this anger reveal about what I value and believe I deserve? When you learn to treat emotions as data rather than commands, something remarkable happens. They stop controlling you. And here's what's strange. They don't disappear. You feel them more clearly. But you feel them the way a doctor feels a patient's pulse. Present, attentive, reading the information, not swept away. If this is resonating with you, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are watching from, or just say pilot. It helps more than you know, and I genuinely read what you write. Now let us go somewhere that takes real courage. Hope. We've been told our whole lives that hope is a virtue. Hope is beautiful. Hope keeps you going. But there's a version of hope that is not a virtue at all. A version that avoids the hard work. Most of us have been living in that version without realizing it. Think about the last time you were in a situation that needed to change. A relationship gone cold. A job slowly draining you. A financial situation stressful for longer than you wanted to admit. How much time spent hoping it would get better on its own? Hoping the other person would change? Hoping the economy would shift? Hoping the right opportunity would appear? Hoping the world would fix what you weren't willing to fix? That kind of hope is a painkiller. It dulls the urgency just enough that you can tolerate a situation without actually addressing it. And it has cost more people more years of their lives than any other single habit I can think of. The alternative to passive hope is not cynicism. It is not giving up on good outcomes. The alternative is what you might call calculated intention. Instead of, I hope this works out, it is, I have looked at this clearly, I understand what needs to happen, and I'm going to do those specific things. It is the difference between a person standing on the shore hoping the boat will come and a person who has already learned to build a boat and is halfway through the work. This is not a small distinction. It changes everything about how you spend your time, how you make decisions, who you allow into your life, and what you are willing to walk away from. Here is a practice that might feel uncomfortable the first time you try it. The next time you catch yourself saying, I hope things improve, about anything, your health, your work, a relationship, your finances, stop. Just pause right there. And ask yourself, what specifically would need to be true for things to improve? And then ask, what am I actually doing this week, today, right now, to make those specific things true? If the answer is honest and there is nothing concrete on the list, then hope is functioning as a substitution for action. And the moment you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. Subscribe if you have not already, because the next few things I'm going to walk through are going to go even deeper. Let us talk about something that sounds cold when you first hear it, but is actually one of the most liberating ideas you can internalize. It is the idea of detachment from outcome. And I want to be careful here, because this is often misunderstood. Detachment from outcome does not mean you stop caring about what happens. It does not mean you become passive or indifferent or that you stop trying. What it means is that you stop letting the fear of a particular outcome dictate your behavior before the outcome has even arrived. You stop playing not to lose and start playing to play well. There is an old tradition among certain warrior cultures, the idea that a fighter who has already made peace with the possibility of losing or even the possibility of death moves differently than one who is desperately clinging to survival. The desperate fighter hesitates. He second guesses. He tightens when he should be fluid. He pulls back right when he needs to commit. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, the fear of the worst case is taking up bandwidth that should be dedicated to pure execution. Who has genuinely accepted the worst case, who has sat with it, imagined it, made some kind of internal peace with it. That person moves freely. There is nothing to protect. There is nothing to lose that hasn't already been accounted for. And so every movement is clean, every decision is clear, and every action comes from a place of genuine choice rather than desperate reaction. You can apply this to your life right now. Think of something you want that you have been hesitating to pursue. A risk you have been circling for months or years. And instead of trying to convince yourself it will all work out, try something different. Sit quietly for a few minutes and actually imagine the worst realistic outcome. Not a catastrophic fantasy, but the honest worst case. What would actually happen? How would you actually cope? What would your life actually look like on the other side of that failure? Most people find when they do this exercise honestly that the worst case is survivable. It would be hard. It might be painful. There might be loss involved, but it would not end them. And the moment you truly believe that, not just say it, but feel it in your bones, the fear loses most of its power. Because fear only controls you when you are running from something you cannot afford to look at directly. Look at it. Name it. Accept it. And then go do the thing anyway. I want to share something now that ties all of this together and gets to what I think is the deepest layer of what we are actually talking about. There is a difference between who you are and what you feel. And most people have never been given that distinction in a way that actually sticks. Most of us grew up in an environment where emotions were treated as identity. You got angry and someone said, "You are such an angry person." You got anxious and someone labeled you a worrier. You were sad for a while and people started treating you like sadness was your permanent address. And so over time, we fused ourselves to our emotional states. We started saying, "I'm anxious," instead of "I feel anxious right now." We started saying, "I'm angry," instead of "I notice anger arising in me." That difference in language is not just philosophical. It is deeply practical. Because when your emotion is you cannot observe it. You are inside it. You are it. The only option is to be consumed by it or suppress it. Both of those lead to problems. But when you can stand slightly outside your emotional state, when you can say there is fear arising, interesting, what is it pointing at? You have reclaimed something essential. You have reclaimed the observer. And the observer is where your actual power lives. This is not about becoming cold. This is not about shutting down and becoming some emotionally flat, robotic version of yourself. The people I respect most are deeply feeling people. They feel things powerfully and fully, but they have learned to be present with their emotions rather than possessed by them. They have learned to let feelings pass through rather than building permanent structures out of temporary weather. Think about that image for a second. Temporary weather. Emotions are weather. They arise, they intensify, they pass. The person who mistakes the storm for the climate will make very different decisions than the person who knows the storm is passing. When you genuinely internalize that, when you really feel in your body that this feeling I have right now, as intense as it is passing through me and not defining me, everything changes. Your decisions become calmer. Your relationships become healthier. Your tolerance for difficulty expands dramatically. Because you are no longer spending energy fighting the weather. You are building a shelter that holds regardless of what the sky is doing. Here is something practical. The next time a strong negative emotion comes up, anger, shame, jealousy, fear, cry this. Do not react and do not repress. Instead, name what you are feeling as specifically as you can. Not just, "I am upset." That is too vague. Something more precise. I feel humiliated because I expected to be treated with more respect and I wasn't. I feel afraid because I have tied my sense of worth to this outcome and it might not go my way. I feel jealous because what that person has reflects something I want and haven't yet allowed myself to pursue. The specificity is the key. Vague emotion is overwhelming. Named specific emotion is information, and information can be worked with. You can ask, is this feeling based on an accurate read of reality, or is it based on an old story I am still carrying? Is this fear pointing at an actual risk, or is it the ancient alarm system misfiring again? Does this jealousy tell me something true about what I actually want in my life? When emotion becomes data, it transforms. It stops being something that happens to you and starts being something that teaches you. That is the alchemical shift. That is the transition from being a leaf in the wind to being someone who watches the wind and reads what it is saying. If you are getting value from this, take a moment and hit the like button. It costs nothing, and it genuinely matters in terms of getting this kind of content in front of more people who need it. Share it with someone who has been going through a hard time and might need to hear something like this today. You never know whose life a single conversation might shift. Have you ever come home from a party or a social gathering and felt completely wiped out? Not just tired, but drained to your very core? You might have had a great time, laughed a lot, met new people, but still you feel this overwhelming need to just be alone and silent. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. This is what we call a social hangover, and it's a very real sign of the cost of what psychologists call social performance. Think about it. Every time we step out into the world, we're essentially putting on a show. We're on a stage, and the people around us are our audience. We carefully choose our words, monitor our body language, and try to present the best, most likable version of ourselves. We want to be funny, but not too loud. Smart, but not a know-it-all. Friendly, but not overbearing. It's a constant balancing act, a non-stop performance where we're both the actor and the director. This performance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how we build relationships, collaborate at work, and navigate the complexities of society. It's the glue that holds our social fabric together. But like any performance, it requires an immense amount of energy. Mental energy, emotional energy, it all gets spent. Every smile, every nod of agreement, every small talk conversation about the weather is a tiny withdrawal from our energy bank account. And for some of us, especially introverts, that account depletes much faster than for others. Let's break down this cost a bit more. First, there's the cognitive load. When you're in a social setting, your brain is working overtime. It's processing verbal cues, nonverbal signals like facial expressions and posture, and the overall mood of the room. You're constantly adjusting your own behavior based on this flood of incoming data. Should I tell this joke? Is this person getting bored? Did I say the right thing? It's like running multiple complex software programs at the same time. Your brain's processor gets maxed out, and eventually it just needs to shut down and reboot. Then there's the emotional labor. This is the effort it takes to manage your feelings to fit the social situation. Maybe you're having a rough day, but you have to attend the work event and put on a happy face. Maybe someone says something that annoys you, but you swallow your irritation and smile politely to avoid conflict. This act of suppressing your true feelings and projecting an expected emotion is incredibly taxing. It's like holding a heavy weight. You can do it for a while, but eventually your muscles will give out. Over time, this emotional labor can lead to burnout and even a sense of detachment from your own true feelings. So, what happens when you've spent all your social energy? You get that social hangover. Symptoms can include mental fog, irritability, a desire to avoid people, and a feeling of being emotionally raw. It's your mind and body's way of screaming for a break. It's a signal that your social battery is at zero and desperately needs recharging. And what is the ultimate charging station for a depleted social battery? It's solitude. Now, when I say solitude, a lot of people immediately think of loneliness, but they are two completely different things. Loneliness is a painful, negative state of feeling disconnected and isolated. Solitude, on the other hand, is a positive, voluntary state of being alone. It's choosing to spend time with the most important person in your life, yourself. It's not about running away from others. It's about returning to yourself. In solitude, the performance ends. The curtain falls. You can finally take off the social mask and just be. There's no one to impress, no conversation to maintain, no expectations to meet. The constant hum of social processing in your brain finally quiets down. It's in this quiet that the magic happens. Firstly, solitude allows for self-reflection and clarity. When you're constantly surrounded by the noise and opinions of others, it's hard to hear your own inner voice. Your thoughts, your feelings, your desires all get jumbled up with external influences. Spending time alone gives you the space to untangle that knot. You can check in with yourself. How am I really feeling? What do I truly want? Solitude is where you can reconnect with your own internal compass, the one that guides you toward a life that feels authentic and true. Secondly, solitude is a breeding ground for creativity. So many great artists, writers, and thinkers throughout history have praised the power of being alone. When you're alone, your mind is free to wander, to make new connections, to dream without interruption. You're not constrained by the logic or judgment of a group. This is when your most original ideas can surface. Whether it's solving a complex problem, coming up with a business idea, or writing a song, giving yourself the gift of uninterrupted time is one of the best ways to spark that creative fire. And thirdly, solitude helps you build a stronger sense of self. When you're comfortable and happy in your own company, you become less dependent on others for validation. Your self-worth isn't tied to how many likes you get or how many party invitations you receive. You know who you are, and you like that person. This self-reliance makes you more resilient. When you inevitably face criticism or social rejection, it doesn't shatter you, because your foundation is built on solid ground, your own self-acceptance. So, how can we start to embrace solitude and make it a regular part of our lives? It doesn't mean you have to become a hermit and move to a cabin in the woods, unless you want to, of course. It's about intentionally carving out small pockets of alone time in your daily life. Start small. Maybe it's just 15 minutes in the morning, sipping your coffee and looking out the window before anyone else is awake. No phone, no news, just you and your thoughts. Or maybe it's taking a solo walk during your lunch break. Leave your headphones at home and just pay attention to the world around you and the thoughts that pop into your head. Schedule it. Just like you schedule meetings and appointments, schedule me time in your calendar. Protect that time fiercely. It is just as important as any other commitment. It could be an evening dedicated to reading a book, an afternoon spent gardening, or a weekend trip to a place you've always wanted to visit by yourself. The key is to treat this time not as empty space to be filled, but as a vital activity for your well-being. It's not about being bored. It's about being present with yourself. If you find your mind racing or feeling anxious at first, that's normal. We are so used to constant stimulation that silence can feel uncomfortable. Stick with it. Your mind will eventually settle, and you'll begin to appreciate the peace. Learning to balance the cost of social performance with the restorative power of solitude is one of the most important skills we can develop for our mental and emotional health. It allows us to show up in the world as our best selves, engaged, energetic, and authentic, because we know we have a sanctuary to return to, a place where we can recharge and reconnect. So the next time you feel that social hangover creeping in, don't ignore it. See it as a signal. A reminder to step off the stage, close the curtain, and spend some quality time with your number one fan, you. It's in that quiet space that you'll find the energy, clarity, and strength to get back out there and shine again. Thanks so much for watching. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with social hangovers and solitude in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more conversations about living a more intentional life. See you in the next one.